Welcome to the Woodridge Baptist Church podcast. For more information about what's happening in the life of our church, visit our website at www.woodridge.org. Enjoy the podcast.
Friends, I invite you to turn with me to Mark chapter 14. We'll start in verse 32 today as we continue our study of Mark's gospel. Students, how y'all doing over there? You good? You better, all right. Stay awake is all I'm saying. It's been a week, right? But it's been a good week. It's been a good week. Some years ago, as we get into this famous passage of Scripture with Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane, it really was provoking a lot of thought about my prayer life this week. And, things that I've read, things that I've done that really were transformative for me in the way that I communicated with God. One of those books was by Dallas Willard. It was a book called Hearing God. And just in working through that to take a really hard evaluation of the way that I communicate with God, and more importantly, the way that I need to change the way that I communicated with God. We're getting into a passage in Mark 14 where it's going into an incredibly difficult time for Jesus. It's a lot of dark hours that are ahead of him. And I think that there's something that Mark wants to show us from Jesus' example on how it is that we are supposed to be praying when we're in a dark time too. So with that said, let's just jump in. Let's see what the Lord wants to show us today. Where we're at, Jesus has been in the upper room with the guys. They were taking a Passover meal. They had taken communion together. He leaves the room. The guys were following him. He crosses over what is called the Kidron Valley to a place up on the slopes, which is called the Mount of Olives. And for those of you that have ever been to Jerusalem, you would be able to see everything right in front of you. It's all right there, the Kidron Valley, the Mount of Olives, even the Garden of Gethsemane, which is right there. This was also going to be a place for Jesus that a couple of things. One, he went here quite a lot so that he could pray. You would see this kind of theme in Scripture where Jesus would go and minister, and then he would withdraw to a solitary place, and he spent time with the Father. He needed to be refueled. You understand what I'm saying? And it seems that he was a bit predictable with the way that he did it. That the Garden of Gethsemane was probably one of the places that Jesus went to quite a lot. It's also a place that he's going to be captured and arrested. Now, at this point in Mark's gospel, it's probably somewhere around 1 a.m, but something had already gone incredibly wrong, and Luke's gospel helps tell us what. If you look at Luke 22, 3-6, it says this. It says, then Satan entered Judas. By the way, that's not good, right? Called Iscariot, one of the 12. And Judas went to the chief priests and the officers of the temple guard and discussed with them how they might betray Jesus. They were delighted and they agreed to give him money. He consented and he watched for an opportunity to hand Jesus over to them when no crowd was present. And by the way, one of the great times to do it when no crowd is present is roughly at about 1 a.m. in the Garden of Gethsemane, right? Because everybody else is probably crashed. Now, here's the thing. Judas is named here, but he seems to have a last name, Iscariot. But honestly, in antiquity, they didn't have last names. My last name is Evans. That's just not the way they rolled back then. So the question has become, well, where did he get the name Iscariot? Well, there are a couple of thoughts on that. One is that there was a place, if you were to go over there, into the southern portion of what we would call Israel, called Ishkarioth. Are y'all writing that down? Yeah, so it's called Ishkarioth. Now, the thing is, you would have to go back to Joshua, I think Joshua 15, to see this place mentioned. And there's not really another mention of it. In fact, a lot of scholars look and they go, we're not really sure this place existed by the time of Jesus. So maybe, but, we're not sure. If that is where Judas is getting his, last name, then it's in reference to the fact that he came from a southern area. And that meant he would have been like the only guy of the 12 that came from that area. Okay, maybe. There's another possibility. There were a group, or so it is at least said, in Jesus' time, they were called Jewish insurrectionists, which means these were people that wanted to kind of have a hostile overthrow of the government. In this case, it's the Roman government, not recommended hostile overthrows. I'm just saying, apparently this group was about it. Now, the group were called the Sicarii. So some have wondered if this is kind of a twist on the word Sicarii to refer to a Jewish group of insurrectionists that wanted the Roman government toppled. In fact, they were, the word Sicarii mean people who wield daggers. Now that sounds not good, am I right? And maybe Judas was one of them. They had a reputation for kind of cloaking themselves up and kind of mingling in a crowd. And then they would pull their dagger out and kill an aristocrat right there in the crowd. And next thing you know, you're just walking through the crowd. Oops, there's a body on the ground. They're like, how'd they do that? And it's because they were really good at it. And then they would just kind of disappear into the crowd. Some people have wondered, is that where Judas got his last name, Iscariot? I'm here to tell you, I'm not really sure. But what we do know is that he was willing to hand Jesus over for some cash. And honestly, not a lot of cash, even at that, even back in olden times, ways of scaling money, not for a lot. But what we do know about Jesus is he would often go to this specific garden to pray and to reconnect. It was a part of the flow of his life to pray and to reconnect. What that also meant is he is predictable. So he goes into Gethsemane. And the word Gethsemane, just so you know, it's a Hebrew word that means an oil press. So as you go to the Mount of Olives, they're right there. Right by the Mount of Olives is the Garden of Gethsemane. In fact, you walk through it to get to it. And the olives, there was this device that they would crush the olive to get the oil out of it so that you can then use it for trade and you could make money. This was going to be a place where Jesus is crushed in a different way. But also, we know this, there were no gardens in Jerusalem at that time. You would have the walls, and then the gardens would be on the outside of Jerusalem. The reason is because there was this weird law. I know you're going to write this down. There was this weird law that no manure could touch holy ground. Well, if the holy ground was inside of the gates, then you're not going to have the animals there because it would, sully the space. It's got to go on the outside of it. But we also know that only wealthy people could afford a garden like that. So you're right outside of Jerusalem. You're looking at the garden. Somebody owns it that's a person of means. Apparently, whoever this person was probably a friend of Jesus because they're giving Jesus access to this space so that it could be a place where he would go and pray and spend time with the Father. But it's also in this place that Jesus was going to have some of his deepest struggles. Have you struggled lately? If you look at it in Mark chapter 14, verse 32, he knows he's going to struggle, and so here's what it says. He tells the disciples, "Sit here while I pray." He also took his 3 closest companions into the garden with him, and looking at them, he said, "My soul is grieved to the point of death. Remain here and keep watch." And then he goes beyond them, falls to the ground, and he prays that if it is possible, the hour might pass by him. Now, I want you to stop for just a second. I want you to notice something here. He did not hide his struggles from his friends. If there's one thing, we're going to see a couple of things about Jesus here, but one of the things that we see about him is he did not hide his struggles from his friends. One of the things I try to tell my girls in the way that I raise them is, one, pick good friends. Don't pick bad ones, all right? Feel free to write that down, but that's kind of common sense. But I want them to be able to have friends that when they're in a particularly dark time, they know that they can go to them. They know that they can share with them. They know that they're going to be godly and wise, and they know that they can keep their mouth shut. They can hold a confidence. That's what good friends do. But Jesus is here, and he's going to the guys and saying, this is going to be a pretty difficult time, and I need you guys. I need you praying with me. I need you praying for me. So he invites them to be with him while he struggles. But notice his prayer. The Greek's a little bit more like lets you in on some stuff. It involved continual action on his part. He didn't say something once and go, I said it. He says it. And he goes to the ground. And then he gets up and he's like walking around Gethsemane some more because his soul is struggling. And he literally drops back to the ground and he's praying the same thing. And then he gets up and he's like pacing around and then he drops to the ground and he prays the same thing. When is the last time you prayed like that? Like that. Mark's gospel says Jesus was distressed, which, by the way, is not quite what it was. The word literally means he is struck with terror about what he's going through. I want to remind you of something this morning. It is okay to feel the weight of what you're going through. It's okay. I mean, if Jesus did here, it is perfectly fine too, right where you're at. And you don't have to pretend. You don't have to act like it's not there, or that you feeling the way that you do means that you don't trust God. It doesn't mean any of that. You're feeling it. You're feeling it. But there was more to the story than that. Because as it says, going a little farther, he fell to the ground and he prayed something very specific. That if possible, the hour might pass from him. Abba, Father, he said, everything is possible for you. Take this cup from me, yet not what I will, but what you will. What you will. This is complete honesty in a brutal struggle. I was thinking about it. I'm just going to let you in. I was earlier this week, about halfway through the week, I got into the car, I shut the door, and I let the Lord know what I was thinking. And I was irritated with him. And I let him know that I was irritated with him. Of course, the Lord's up there going, oh, I didn't see that coming. Are you kidding? Me? I'm sitting there going, how many times do I have to say something to you? Like, are you going to do anything? That's me praying this week. Are you going to do anything? Because I'm getting a little tired of talking about it. See, you all thought that I had it all together. I have never said that to you, ever. And I will never say that to you. That was a moment of raw honesty with God. And here's the thing. I think God can handle it. He already knew what I was thinking. He already knew what I was feeling. Complete honesty in a brutal struggle. I was like, I am sick of it. Sick of it. And then I drove off. The other thing that you see from Jesus here is complete submission and acceptance of his suffering to come. Hold on to that for a second. Because the cup, he says, can you let this cup pass from me? That was a first century figure of speech for your allotment of pain and suffering in life. For him, it's the cross, which at this moment in his life, it's just a few hours away. He's like, I know it's coming. I know it's soon. If there's another way, like if we could do this some other way. But it got me thinking, how are the guys doing in all this? Remember, he invited them in. He invited his friends into his struggles. How are the guys doing? Glad you asked. So verse 37, he returns to his disciples and he found them sleeping. Simon, he said to Peter, are you asleep? Couldn't you keep watch for 1 hour? Apparently the answer is no. And Peter's probably there going, Jesus, it's 1 a.m, right? Couldn't you keep watch for an hour? Watch and pray so that you will not fall into temptation. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. And once more, he went away and he prayed the same thing. And when he came back, he found them sleeping because their eyes were heavy. They didn't even know what to say to him. And returning the third time, he said to them, are you still sleeping and resting? It's enough. There's one New Testament scholar that said, better way to translate enough would be like this. What is the use? What is the use with these guys? And then he said, the hour has come. Look, the Son of Man is delivered into the hands of sinners. Rise, let's go, because here comes my betrayer. Did you notice that they're asleep when they're supposed to be doing something for their friend? Like they have checked out of the garden. And did you notice, it's like, hey, what are you all up to? But did you notice he actually calls Peter out by name? Right? He actually, what he did, if you look at it, and it made me wonder, like, why are you calling him out? Right? And Peter's probably there going, me? The other guys were sleeping too. Like, why are you calling me out? Here's a hunch. It's a hunch. I feel pretty good about it. It goes back to what happened to something right before this moment in Mark chapter 14, verse 29, where Peter says this to Jesus, everyone else may stumble in their faith, but not me. Well, this isn't very long. This is not very far, and Peter's messing it up. I have a hunch that Jesus is like, how you doing over there, guy? And I think that there was something for Peter because he doesn't even call him Peter, he called him Simon. Peter means rock. He's like, yeah, you're not that. You're not that. You might think you are, but you're not. You're not. It's almost as if Jesus is saying something to him like this, man, we've still got a long way to go in this, don't we? Yeah, you're not there, but you thought you were. There's a long way to go. I think there's an important lesson from Jesus in this. This is a moment of quiet before a storm, isn't it? He's in the garden. He's praying. But I think something that we can learn from this is we need to use the times of calm to build your character and convictions for the trials that are ahead of you. You can use the time of calm for the trials that are ahead of you. You can be maturing in the way that you pray. You can be maturing in your faith. You can be growing up. And you can be forming your soul so that when the storm hits, it doesn't rock you so much. You're better prepared for it. You're ready for it. Now, even if you think about this, on the third time to wake them, notice he didn't even rebuke them. Instead, this is what Jesus did. His previous request to the Father that he not suffer, he put that aside, even though he was praying that. Would you please? Is there any other way? Can this not happen? Prayed like that? He's like, would you do that? He stopped praying it. And he said, let's go. It's time to go. The hour has come. Let's go. Do you see what I'm getting at? Using the time of calm to forge yourself to go through the storm that is ahead of you, through the darkness that is ahead of you. But I think there are other lessons from Jesus' prayer that I want us to remember today. For those of you that are note takers, feel free to write this down because this is the first thing. Jesus gave God his feelings. Jesus gave God his feelings. One of the reasons, all right, I'm going to ask you a question. How many of you have prayed and found yourself bored with your prayer? Go ahead, throw your hands up. It's all right. How many of you have prayed and you're like, good grief, I am bored to death over here? Have you ever wondered how God feels about your prayer? I mean, if you're sitting over there bored, how do you think God's feeling? He's like, I'm listening to all of these people. Have you ever stopped to think, what if we prayed like Jesus in Gethsemane? You think you'd be bored with that? Would that bore you? Where you're not holding back, where you're telling the Lord what you're thinking, you're telling the Lord what you're feeling. Pray like that. Jesus did, we should too. I mean, a lot of what we do, let's face it, it's edited, it's disengaged, and then you wonder why you're bored when you pray. It's because you're boring. I mean, this isn't a mystery, you're boring. You don't talk to your friends like that, or if you do, you're boring even to your friends. They're like, stop it, stop it. But to have an engaged prayer life, it's from the gut. It's coming from the deepest part of you, just like him, just like him. I want you to think about this. The Psalms are filled with things that we would probably never say to God. Psalm 68, crush the skull of my enemy. When is the last time you prayed that? I'm taking that up today. I'm taking it up. It's honest. It's not prescriptive, by the way. The idea behind it is it's honest. Stop them. Why do you let my enemies flourish? Why don't you stop this? It's honest. When is the last time you took your feelings and you went boom to God with them? John Ortberg said something I thought was really good. He said, prayer isn't a place to be good, it's a place to be honest. Because God already knows you. He knows you. He also knows the games you're playing when you talk to him. He knows. And here's the thing. The only person that you're fooling when you pray like that is yourself. You are not fooling God. Not one bit. He knows what you're thinking. He knows what you're feeling. He's like, stop with the games. Stop with the games. The only person you're fooling is yourself. And so not only does it disengage you from God because there's no authenticity in the way that you're praying to God, but you're also fooling, you're gaslighting yourself. You just keep saying to yourself over and over that this is what you're really thinking, this is what you're really feeling, and it doesn't represent anything of the way that you're thinking and you're feeling. The only person that you're fooling is yourself. Jesus is saying, learn from my example today. Learn from my example today. Here's the question. What feelings do you have that you need to be honest about with God? What are they? Here's the second thing this morning. Jesus gave God his desires. He gave him his feelings. He gave him his desires. Let this cup pass from me. He said it. He said it. Now, if I'm reading this right, Jesus is asking the Father to not go to the cross. I think I'm reading that right. He's asking the Father to not go to the cross. And what that means is he's inviting us to bring all of our desires to God and not just the good ones. Not just the good ones. Bring all of them to him. Take them to him. Let me give you an example. What if before you clicked on a pornographic link, you had an honest prayer that went something like this? I really want to lust after this person right now. What if you said that to God? That's a pretty honest prayer, wouldn't you agree? When's the last time you prayed like that? Or how about this? What if we prayed, Lord, I want to hurt this person with the things I say about them and the things that I'm about to do to them. By the way, before you say it and do it, hello. When's the last time you prayed like that? Yeah, that's actually in me right now. When is the last time you said something like that? You starting to get it? Or when's the last time you said something like this? Lord, I love being materialistic. I just love being greedy. I could do this for a while, but I just want you to get the idea. When is the last time you prayed like that? In other words, what if we were actually honest is about what is in us with him? I'm going to bet this. Your prayer life won't be boring. I'm going to bet that. I'm going to bet it changes everything. I'm going to be totally honest with you. Sometimes I don't even know what my desires are. I don't have a clue. Usually I say that. I have no idea what I'm thinking and feeling about things. Okay. But this brings up the question, what desires do you need to give to God? Whole thing, full stop. You're not just talking about the good stuff in you, the good desires in you. Give him those too. But the other ones. What desires do you need to give to God? And here's the third. Jesus gave his Father his trust. He gave him his emotions. He gave him his desires. But he also gave him his trust. Not as I will, but what you will be done. Which means his deepest desire was to do what his Father wanted him to do. That was his deepest desire. And there's a sense of resolve about what's ahead. Did you notice that? He accepted it. He accepted it. And Jesus stands alone in the garden to face his betrayer Judas, hundreds of soldiers from the Roman guard. But it wasn't because a lack of honest and heartfelt prayer. It's because it's what the Father had for him. That's why. But also, I want you to understand this. This wasn't about giving up. It was about giving in. Him doing what the Father wanted him to do was not giving up. It was giving in. It was him saying, okay. Even though he was saying okay to a scourge, he was saying okay to a crown of thorns. He was saying okay to nails through his arms and through his feet. He was saying okay to all of those things. He said, time to rise up and it's time to go. It's time for this to start. I love what St. Ignatius said. He said, we should not fix our desires on health or sickness, wealth or poverty, success or failure, a long life or a short one, for everything has the potential of calling forth in us a deeper response to our life in God. Our only desire and our only choice should be this: I want and I choose what better leads to God's deepening his life in me. What if we prayed that? What if we prayed that? Larry Crabb said when we're facing particularly dark times, we have to shift from the question, how can I get out of this, to what can I get out of this? And I think he's right. Henry Cloud, he's a psychologist. He said we have to surrender control over the things we don't have control over. He said the crazy thing is, in your life, about 15% of what's going on in your life do you actually have control over. The rest of it you don't. And yet we watch people expend extraordinary efforts to control the things that they can't control, including God, like good luck. Expending extraordinary efforts for that. The question that it brings up is this: where do you need to give God your trust? In other words, where do you today need to say to God, your will be done? Your will be done. You've given him your emotions. You've given him all of your desires. You gave it. But then you said, your will be done. Where in your marriage do you need to say today, your will be done? Your will be done. Where do you need to say with your children, your will be done? Children, where do you need to say, your will be done? Where in your career do you need to say, your will be done? Like where? Because it's not, especially if it's not being done. Where do you need to say it? Where in your sexuality do you need to say, your will be done? Where? I mean, that's when you know that you have fully given things over to him. Your will be done. Nothing in this passage said that this was going to be easy, quite the opposite. Quite the opposite. But where?
We hope you have enjoyed the podcast. For more information about our church, visit www.woodridge.org.